Leading 17 yards. Williams throws. Odunze doesn't come back. Incomplete. And the Texans will get this one.
The Chiefs, the Bills, the Bucks, the Saints, the Vikings, Chargers, Seahawks, Steelers, Eagles, and Texans
Swarm! Can I say it again?
You can say it again.
All right, Texans Swarm, baby!
Those are the only undefeated teams in the NFL.
What a list.
And I wanted to say that to open up the show because while I still, Joe, like last week, want to hold the Houston Texans to a higher standard, I perhaps now have to accept that covering the spread is one thing that's just not going to happen. But also, while there was a lot of things that needed to be cleaned up in last night's victory, I thought the performance that the Texans defense had last night, I don't think any team would have beaten that. Now, look, older quarterback might have done a little bit better. But I was really impressed by the Texans defense, who sacked Caleb Williams 7 times and hit him 11 more times and pressured him 20 plus. It was a really, I thought, impressive performance by the defense. We'll talk about the many things that the offense needs to clean up and some of the mistakes that were made over the course of this one. But I came away, Joe, from last night's game being really impressed by the Texans defense.
Yeah, I mean, D'Amico was just in his bag the whole game. I mean, everything that they were doing from, the most he's ever blitzed or called blitzes in a game, just what the defensive line was just doing, getting pressure on a regular basis. Derek Stingley and Lassiter were good. I agree with you. The defense, I don't know if it matters who the quarterback was on the other side of the field yesterday. I mean, they were swarming. Like, they were swarming everywhere. Tackles for loss, everything. Like that was one of the more impressive performances from this defense we've seen over the last, now year and 2 games of D'Amico Ryan's tenure as the head coach of this team.
It never felt in doubt. And they were just smacking the bejesus out of everybody. Literally, in fact. Azeez Al-Shaair punched a guy.
Yes, he did.
And got away with it completely. They were hitting people all over the field. I got to say, I know you probably have different thoughts on the Caleb Williams performance, but I have a lot of respect for Williams. I can't believe he survived that game. He was getting hit hard when he was getting sacked, when he was getting hit, when he was even scrambling. He got killed, and he's not a very big guy. I don't know what he's going to be ultimately as a quarterback, and there certainly were a couple of throws that he missed in this game, but he went through the absolute gauntlet because the Texans pass rush just kept on coming after him. And, he's got some good elusiveness. He found his way out of a couple of
They could have had like 12 sacks.
Right. They could have been more. I mean, there was one play, and ultimately Williams threw an interception on it where Danielle Hunter ripped his jersey off. And I asked Hunter afterwards, have you ever ripped the guy's jersey mid-play? And he said, wait, that was his jersey? And I'm like, wow, he's got really strong legs. So, look, Williams, long way to go. It's his second game in the NFL. Maybe he should have reevaluated sending that text to his punter this offseason about how they're not going to punt very often this year. They've punted 12 times the first 2 games.
Yeah.
But the Texans defense was suffocating last night. And I don't know what quarterback against that version of the defense would have been able to make things happen.
I don't either, because they were just the pressure was just incredible. I mean, the ease of it was what was the most startling, from the other side of it. But just the way that Hunter and Anderson were impacting the game without it really felt like being challenged. And it wasn't just the poor play on the other side of the ball from the Bears offense, but those guys, it just showed you like all the hype, all the excitement about they signed Autry, who hasn't even played yet.
Yeah, I forgot.
And they brought in Mario Edwards and Fatu Kasi and Danielle Hunter. Like, it just, all the hype around it, you kind of just saw it play out in front of your eyes in yesterday's game. Like, it was just easy for them.
This is what I view this pass rush as being capable of. And I know when we've had DJ in here, he's talked about wanting a little bit more depth, but I feel like they've got great depth. Derek Barnett as a backup, really good. And what they found at defensive tackle in Mario Edwards coming in here, who got called for a BS roughing the passer. I asked him about that. He's like, you can't control them all. You can't win them all. But they were just smacking the absolute bleep out of Caleb Williams and that Bears offense. And there are things to clean up. But just remember, this league is very unforgiving. The Rams are 0-2. The Bengals are 0-2. The Ravens are 0-2. You're 2-0. The entire AFC South after you is 0-2. And that defense is capable of performances like that. Will they be able to do it against better quarterbacks? I hope so. They're going to be going up against a lot of good quarterbacks this year. But I know while there's a lot of things to criticize and nitpick, I'm very happy coming out of that because the defense really, I think, showed that it's got some special potential this year.
Yeah, I mean, it just shows that they can take over a game at any given notice. Like this is, it reminds me this, 2 games in, and specifically yesterday, it reminds me a little bit about what made the Eagles so successful in their last Super Bowl run, was that anytime that their offense gave a lead and the defensive lineman could just pin their ears back and go after the quarterback and didn't have to worry about any other assignments because they knew they were going to have to throw the ball, they just make the game a nightmare. I mean, I'm really with you. Like, I think basically Mahomes and Josh Allen are probably the only 2 quarterbacks I would bet on to counteract what happened yesterday. That might be the list. I mean, it was spectacular what they did. And like you said, a couple minutes ago, that game, while close, never felt close.
Yeah.
I mean, it felt like a 40-point blowout in yesterday's game, and they only won by 6. And they could have lost the game yesterday, but they didn't, and that's what matters.
We'll go through some of the stats and how impressive the defense was and nitpick some other things. Some thoughts. 713-780-3776 is how you call us, how you text. From the 281, this texter says, I think it's very funny how the last 2 number 1 overall picks that have been quarterbacks, all this hype around them, and then when they get to the NFL, they do nothing but suck. I'm going to say this again. I don't think Caleb Williams sucked last night.
I mean, it's 2 games.
I feel, and I know, Joe, for you, I mean, that is your guy going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's crazy to put in this conversation because you mentioned the pressures, right?
Yeah.
Bryce Young in week 2 pressured on 4 out of 29 dropbacks. Caleb Williams was the inverse. It was 23 out of 42 dropbacks.
And Young looks hopeless against that pressure. It's his size. Williams is not the biggest guy, but I was really impressed by his ability to escape.
He's a tough
pressure.
son of a gun.
Yeah, it's now a matter of can you make throws downfield. But I mean, for 2 games, it's a rookie quarterback. I'm not making any indictments on Caleb Williams behind an offensive line that doesn't look great to this point for Chicago. Another text, the way D'Amico and Caserio put the D-line together reminds me of those great New York Giants Super Bowl winning defensive lines. I'm not going that far. There's no Michael Strahan on that team. And I know Justin Tuck, I guess, was on the other one. He was probably the ringleader of the 2011 team, but not going that far. But I liked what I saw today. Spencer has a thought at 713-780-3776, the HRNP listener line. Spencer, what's up?
Hey, man, I want to talk about Will Anderson, man. I miss J.J. Watt. I miss J.J. Watt, I really do. But, man, when I seen Will Anderson tackle Caleb Williams, man, he was so aggressive. Man, the dude is 6'4", 240, man. He's just so aggressive whenever he sacks you, man. And then if he didn't sack him, he got, so many pressures, man. And then he came from Alabama, which teaches you how to really hurt somebody, man. I love Will Anderson, man.
Appreciate the phone call, Spencer. I think Spencer loves listening to himself call into the radio too. Did you hear that in the background?
Yeah, you could hear the
whatever. Hey, it's cool. Well, Anderson bulking up this offseason. It's going to be interesting to see how this, I think, helps him out over the course of a full year. He was even saying afterwards, he's been missing a lot of time with the injury that he suffered, the ankle injury that kept him out of a lot of training camp, and how he was a little bit winded in this one. And I would be winded too, running after Williams the way that you have to. I mean, he does not give up on the play. So you have to just keep pursuing and stay active. But Anderson and Hunter, there was a sack that they had where they sandwiched Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
And that moment right there, that's what we were supposed to see week 1. You didn't really see it against Anthony Richardson. Not like they were no-shows. It just didn't show up in the stat sheet. That's, though, why you brought in Danielle Hunter, is the capability of him on one side and Anderson on the other, killing quarterbacks.
Yeah, and then there was him. Maybe it was even the same play because there were so many. It's almost hard to keep track. I was trying to take notes at 2:00 in the morning last night, rewatching the game, and it was exhausting. But there one early in the game where Aziz Al-Shair, he comes off the edge, and Caleb moved up into the right of the pocket, and Will Anderson just decleated him.
Yeah,
like another just defensive signing by Nick Caserio this offseason that just like, you're like, this guy, that dude's nasty for the Texans defense. He's fun.
Yeah. People didn't love Al-Shair's Colts game in week 1. More than made up for it week 2.
Here's what I don't get though. I mean, they shut down Jonathan Taylor week 1, and they should even more so shut down DeAndre Swift. I think Swift had 12 carries for 14 yards. Caleb Williams had the majority of the Bears rushing yards on one scramble towards the very end. I think it was a 30-yard scramble.
Yeah.
That was almost half of their rushing yards yesterday. They have just completely wiped out rushing attacks these first 2 games. And who knows what the Bears rushing offense is, but it's Al-Shair. It's Jalen Petrie who killed a tight end.
My gosh.
That was a tight end.
That hit was so hard, they assumed it was dirty.
Yes.
That's crazy.
It was a Cole Kmet is still rolling on the ground. I guess we have to throw a flag here.
It was so clean. Like, I when do you see that? Like, someone just get rocked so hard. They're like, yep, head to head.
He had another one.
Penalty.
He had another big hit. I want to say it was like either on a screen pass or kind of like a one to the flat to a running back where he popped him. No, it was to Carter. It was DeAndre Carter.
Who, by the way, was the Bears' whole offense.
At some point in the game, I was like, this is way too much on DeAndre Carter for the Bears.
Yeah, he wasn't bad out there.
No, he wasn't bad, but they have 2 better receivers.
That's totally true. Texas defense, you like to hear the word swarm. I do. I like how in the stadium they're still doing the Texans swarm chant.
Yeah, on third downs.
Slowly catching on.
On NBC, I couldn't quite make out what that was.
It happened.
Okay. Can I ask you a question about that, though?
What?
How do you feel about them still having to tell the fans to do it?
It's early.
I mean, the Browns game was the first time it happened.
That's true.
So,
but it does
home game 1.
They were loud.
They were loud. There were a lot of Bears fans.
There was a lot of
I didn't like how many Bears fans there were.
Yes, we estimated on the show prior to this one about 30%. That was just from 2 guys watching on TV.
Yeah.
You guys were there.
It felt like, well, I was on the visitor side. So on my side, I would say yes on the visitor side for it's 30% easy. I don't know what the other side of the stadium looked like.
Some of my friends who were in attendance were annoyed by the amount, but I thought that based off of the complaining that there would be more. So I think you're right. I think it was about 30%. Look, it's a fan base that travels pretty well. It is. But the crowd, it was good. It was a fun environment last night. And while there's a lot for the Texans to clean up, just remember they're one of only a few teams that are still undefeated. And we're just 2 weeks into the year.